So a new Battles 2 update's coming soon, update 1.1.1, and there's no new features, just a tiny mid-season update that contains another round of bug fixes and balance changes. So without further ado, let's just go over them and see what we have in store for us. And I will explain my thoughts on each and every one of the changes, if it's significant enough of a difference, of course. So first off, we're looking at balance changes on the Dartling Monkey. Ultra Gunner got a bonus damage to SRAM increase from 8 to 20. Really don't know if this is going to do enough to make Dartling Monkey any more viable than it currently is. But I guess a change is better than nothing at all. Might make it easier for you to defend like all-out giant ZMG rushes. Yu-Gi-Oh can help clean up a little bit better now. But don't expect this to really change that much. Now, the next change is going to be pretty important. We got the Boomerang Monkey. More Press got another nerf, this time to ZMGs. This is huge, and I think this is the right way to nerf the More Press, because it against a Moab isn't too OP. Multiple mobs will still get past the More Press, because they move pretty fast. But yeah, the biggest problem was with the ZMGs, because with just a few More Presses, you can knock back so many ZMGs, like a giant stack of maybe even a dozen or more, which meant you could, well, stall it until you got enough money for other stuff, making it extremely hard to rush More Presses in the mid-game. So now Boomer players are going to have to over-defend even more against ZMG rushes. All in all, fair change. Next one is to the Bomb Shooter. Now, I did take a look at the patch notes before this, and it looks like a lot of changes are just importing BTD6 changes over to here, and this is one of them. In case you don't know, in BT6 now, if you go bottom path, cross path, all the paths, all the upgrades in that path now pop Black Bloons, which I already feel is super OP in BT6, especially in races. Now it's gonna make it even better, because the biggest problem with Battles 2 Bomb is with the early game, it's really hard to defend with a cluster bomb when it can't pop Black Bloons, but now, the fact that it can, well, it's now strong early and mid, so expect to see Bomb used in a lot more loadouts. I just kind of fear this might be too strong of a buff, and it'll make Bomb Shooter really annoying to play against, especially on maps where it'll be, like, you know, the clusters can get a lot of AoE, such as Koru, for example. Of course, the only way to know is by seeing it in action, so, yeah. Expect to see some Bomb gameplay from me and my opponents next update. As for Balloon Crush change, pretty insignificant. You don't really go Balloon Crush for damage anyway. So, next one, Ice Monkey. Ice Spill got a tiny nerf to the mob damage. I mean, sure, I guess. Ice Spill will still be good after this, because you don't use it for mob damage anyways. Now for Glue Gunner, oh yeah, this one's gonna be game-changing, guys. The fact that Glue Gunners were so fat and took up so much space was such a big problem for all of us, I'm sure. And I'm glad Nijikiwi is hitting the right spots by nerfing the thickness of the glue. Now down from 7 to 6, so we can fit a little bit more Glue Monkeys tied together. Yeah, wow is all I have to say about this change. Sniper Monkey, this is the same change as it was in BT6 a few updates ago. Elite Defender now gets a lot more mob damage. I still don't think it's going to be good enough to be utilized. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about that change. Now, next one is Monkey Buccaneer. This one's pretty big. Again, this is just imported from BT6, but it wasn't in this game, which made early game bolt kind of sketch, because Grape Shot couldn't really defend early. You kind of would need like a cannon ship to have a solid early game for the Buccaneer. And now, well, they buffed that even more, because a lot of time people go the camo Buccaneer crosspath just because they don't have to. They want to go decamo alongside their Buccaneer loadout. So now, not only will it be easier to save up for a cannon ship early game with an 0-1-1 boat, well, the 0-3-1 gets a buff as well. Kinda would like to see some changes to Merchantmentu, since they're just so much worse than any other alternative eco in the game. But I guess you can always wait till the next update. Now, next on the list is Heli Pilot. This is once again a change from BT6. The Comanche's got damage increase across the board from the main Heli, as well as the mini Comanche. Honestly, I've never seen someone try to use Comanche in battles before, but I feel like it's strong, you know, explosion damage, good pierce. It might be useful for some all-out rushes, especially since it gets a lot of power because of the fact that it's only there for a short time, so it's stronger during that time. However, of course, it's not just Heli buffs across the board, because they had to hit the strongest part of the Heli Pilot, the support Chinook. This one I agree with. The initial ability cooldown is now a little bit longer, 5 more seconds, and on top of that, support Chinook costs $500 more. I did some quick maths, and Heli Pilot's still the most efficient alt eco in the game. So I still think it's definitely going to be used. It's just not going to be like an insane snowball like you've seen before this update. It'll just be simply strong. which is fair. Tiny bits at a time, of course. Next up is Mortar Monkey. Need I say more? This is just BTT6 balance changes, although there are a few that aren't, or rather are exclusive to Battles 2. For example, Bloons Incineration can now strip ZMGs off of Fortification, which is gonna be interesting. Granted, I think it's gonna be pretty easy to counter. People will just send normal ZMGs if they see, like, a mortar. Plus, Bloonson's pretty expensive, so sometimes it actually might be worth it to still, you know, send fortified ZMGs and a mortar, because it costs so much money to get up in the first place. But I guess this is also a buff to super late game too, you know, can defortify the fortified ZMGs that come from the F-Bads. Granted, even with that said, I don't think the change is going to be that game-breaking or changing. Next up, Dartling Gunner. It comes with a mix of buffs and nerfs. The buffs are to the Buckshot and the BEZ, because those are, well, pretty bad when you compare it to the other paths, such as the middle path, which got a nerf this update, which I agree with. Mad ability is now a little bit weaker, as well as Hydro Rocket Bots being a bit more expensive. I can't really disagree with this change because, well, Dartlings were so strong as the last update. Although I feel like Dartling will still see a lot of use because, you know, it's still super strong early game, on top of Rocket Storm being a solid option. All you gotta do is now just, you know, save a bit more money. And that's all. Plus the Mad ability wasn't the main mob damage in the first place, just the missiles that do, like, what, 550 damage, so, you know, 18, 12 damage isn't a whole lot on top of that. Either way, moving on, next one is to the Wizard Monkey, which is in an okay spot. It's used in a lot of farm loadouts. Now you have a little bit more, you know, upgrades you can play around with, because something got stronger that weren't really used before, like Dragon's Breath. Fireball damage, 3 to 9. I think this is already a change from BTD 6. Although that Fireball damage might have been from the Tier 4 Phoenix. I forget exactly, but either way. Arcane Spike also got a cost decrease, and the damage of regular balloons got up a little bit. Not like you're going to be using Arcane Spike for regular balloons anyway, so that's not going to change too much. But I think the D-Breath is going to be spicy. 9 damage is nothing to scoff at, and it could probably destroy some pretty hefty rushes. So that being said, nothing wrong with this change. Can't disagree with it. Next one's to the Alchemist, and they're just really buffing its damage. Not that anyone ever used it for damage, but I guess now you can if you wanted to. Larger pots gets more pierce. Stronger acid ticks faster now, along with parachute potions doing more potion damage. And on top of that, faster throwing got a price decrease and attack speed increase. I don't think the attack speed increase applies to the, you know, how fast you can throw out buffs on other towers. I think that, if that was the case, then that change would be super strong. But yeah, I think they were just trying to make Alch start a little bit more viable. That's really all. And yeah, you guys know what comes after Alchemist. It is the Druid. And when I saw Druid on this list, I thought it was definitely going to get a nerf to its Jungle's Bounty ability, because if Heli got a nerf, well, I bet they're hitting all eco, right? Well, not the case. In fact, these are buffs they've given to Druid. I don't know if they've been following the meta, but Druid is pretty much a meta tower. And I'd say was pretty much tied with, like, Dartling NG Heli as the top strategy in the game. And now with that nerfed, well, expect to see Druid in every game this update, guys. I don't know what to say. Like, I know these buffs didn't really hit the towers that are already strong. Ball Lightning wasn't used that much anyways, although I do think Judas Storm was used in some cases. I really didn't think it needed a price buff, to be honest, since Druid is so good at doing everything else. But yeah, as I said, I really expected to see an ult eco nerf, because the thing is, even though Druid ult eco is worse than Heli's by a fair amount, you gotta take into account the tower's utility, wherein it can one-shot up to a fortified Saran Balloon, as well as do good mob damage. It does 8 mob damage because it shoots out 8 thorns, which means it's really good against defending, you know, around 17 Moabs, around 18 Moabs, as well as the insides of those mobs too, because again, if you get enough of them, you don't have to worry about cleanup. You can just have them one-shot. So that utility combined makes the inefficient eco better than what it should be, because you don't have to spend money on other defense that doesn't give you money. And that's why I think there should have been a nerf to the Druid eco, but unfortunately, I don't see it here. I also feel like Superstorm should have gotten hit a little bit too. As it is right now, once you buy it, you're literally invincible to any balloon rush. Now, I know you can say the same for stuff like Balloon Crush and Impale, but the thing is, those towers can't blow balloons back. They're eventually going to keep inching forward and forward, and you kind of pierce cap them if you can send enough balloons out, so there is counterplay to it. Meanwhile, Superstorm, not so much. I think it would have been a good change to include the BTD6 change to Superstorm recently, where it decreases the amount of blowback against ZMGs. I think it would have been great if they applied it to, say, every Bloon here, so that you couldn't blow back DTs all the way to the entrance. Maybe they get blown back a third of the track. So while technically it could blow back infinite Bloons, the fact that it doesn't blow back as much means Bloons can still inch forward against Superstorm. I'd say that's a fair way to balance it, but yeah, this update, they technically made it cheaper because they decreased the cost of the upgrades preceding it. Again, yeah, I'm just shocked that they didn't nerf it. And I think this is going to be reflected by the gameplay you see in Hall Masters, or just any arena in general, until they, well, nerf it, whenever the next update is. Probably not until the new season. Anyways, next up is Engineer, so this is a positive change. Bloon Trap cash per trap decreased from 700 to 500. This is exactly how I would have nerfed a Bloon Trap. Makes it a little bit less oppressive to play against, although I still think, well, you know, if you go pure eco against NG, you're still going to be pretty screwed, but at least you'll be a little bit less screwed now. And yeah, here it changes to Quincy. This is just the same thing as BT6, and it won't change much because Quincy needs a lot more than level 17, let me tell you that. How about stuff before level 17? That does it for the balance changes. Last up is bug fixes. I really don't have much to say here other than the big fixes this update were the ones where Spirit of the Forest would one-shot or do quadratic damage. That's been fixed. Still, even without that glitch, Druid was still super strong and meta. And the other important changes I see here were to the Boomerang and the Ice Monkey. I'm sure you've heard me complain a few times that the Moab Press kept one-shotting Bloons underneath the Moab, which wasn't intended. It didn't work that way in BT6, and yeah, in no way should it just one-shot a fortified ceramic. Multiple of them, in fact. So this is also a pretty solid nerf to the Boomerang. And right below it is the Ice Monkey not hitting Mob class Bloons. In case you didn't know, Impale just broke this update, or last update. It was completely unusable because it couldn't target Moab class Bloons correctly. And now, well, we can use it again. People can start using a Druid sub Ice again, since that didn't get changed at all this update. And as I said again, expect to see a lot of Druid. So overall, I feel like this update was just one change away from being great. Now it's just, I don't know. I'm kind of dreading playing against Druid every game at this patch. I know some of you might say, oh, why don't you just wait a bit and see how it plays out? But the thing is, we've already seen Druid play out in the last month or so. If you've seen anyone the Hall Masters play. I think a lot of us already figured out that Druid is just so versatile, and it's almost too good at this point to not be bringing. And of course, would have liked to see a few more balance changes that weren't just copies from BT6, like buffs to tier 5s, but I think there's more problems in the game that balance changes cannot fix on their own. You might see me explain what I mean about this a little more in a video coming soon, but for now I'll leave it at that. And yeah, that's all. Let me know what you guys think about this update. Do you agree or disagree with the balance changes this update, as well as my thoughts on it? Subscribe for more battles coming soon, and peace out.